Are you ready to quilt? I am always ready to quilt. And I have some fabric today that I'm anxious to share with you and a quilt pattern that we're going to look at. This is something that we are going to aspire to. This isn't what I'm going to ask you to make today. I'm sure if you look at it, you think, look at all those blocks, those triangles, those stars, all that fabric. How do I begin to make that? Well, you begin at the beginning, and that's where we are today. I'm going to show you about dealing with your fabrics, choosing, putting them together, how to cut your fabrics, and then how to put them back together into a fantastic quilt full of color just like this. And I have some fabrics I'm anxious to get started with, and I'm going to show you how these came together. It's such a fun process, and I'm anxious to share this with you. I'm Leah Louise from Inspired Quilting by Leah Louise, and we are going to get to some quilting today. Step by step, let's go. Here's a quick peek at what we're going to be making. And this easy block comes together as a simple 4-patch with no matching seams. We put 4 of them together, and that creates a larger 4-patch, and then this will create our quilt. We'll have 64 of these blocks. They're each going to finish at about 9.5 inches. So we're going 8 by 8, and 8 by 9 is 72. So they'll probably be about 74, 75 inch square quilt. And I think it's going to be beautiful. And we are going to get started on this right away. So let's get going. This is where my next quilt will start. This is fabric I purchased on Etsy from the Blueberry Quilt Patch. And Deborah is the owner. She's also a subscriber and watches my videos. And this is so exciting to meet up with her. And she's offering everybody a 25% discount off her shop. And she sells quilting fabrics and pre-cuts and patterns. So be sure and check that out. That's down in the description below. But right now, I want to talk to you about making a quilt. And my Ready to Quilt series is all about going from beginning to end. How do we tackle each step along the way? So let's talk about how this is going to come together. When I get a single fabric like this, I will buy multiple yards of something that I really, really like. I love the colors. I love the florals, the loose nature of the print. It's not really hard outlines. It's sort of soft and flowy like a watercolor, and I really like that. That's what appealed most to me. Then I got my fat quarters from the Fat Quarter Shop, and they have monthly fat quarter shipments that you can receive, and this is the Petite collection, and I get this once a month. I'll put their link down below as well. And when I saw this, I immediately knew that this was going to be a great match. All these shades of green, plus that bit of kind of a corally, here it's almost terracotta color, but then we have some white, creamy white backgrounds, and that's going to be wonderful. Look at those. I think that's going to work so well with this particular fabric. And I look at this one, and look, it has, the multi-shades of green. This is wonderful. And probably these greens, I don't know. I love them all. I don't know that I'll go with the dark olives, but look, they work. There's the olive. I may have to use all 12 of these. Oh, that's going to be a challenge, right? No, it makes it easier. More is better, right? When it comes to fabric. And then check this out. I also got this at the Fat Quarter Shop. It's a illustration. Let me get the name of this one. This fabric is from the Wildwood Wander Taffy Sketchbook collection. And again, it's florals, right up my alley. And I love the sketchbook. I love the kind of pen and ink look to this, the illustration. I think it's beautiful, and it's going to go absolutely wonderful here. Then I pulled out some my art gallery fabric, and I think is just sort of some, background, low tone fabrics for that will work out wonderful. It just, brings out more of that pinky peach color. And then if I want to get really bold and ambitious, I have some fuchsia. Now, look at this. It doesn't look at all like it's going to match, right? Well, let me show you. If we take this piece and set it on top, Now look at that. Do you see how these dark tones draw out the dark in here? Now the hot pinks, they're not really going to work in here. But these dark magenta, technically it's a fuchsia collection, so we'll call them dark fuchsia. Just look at how well those go along in here. I just think that's going to be a beautiful match with some of these dark ones. Because remember, in your quilt, you don't just want all these light colors or all the medium colors. You want everything. And that's the beauty of getting a collection of fat quarters like this, because they go from light to dark. And that's going to make putting your quilt together easier for you because the hard work is already done. I'm excited to have some beautiful fabrics together. I have to put this side in because if I put that there, it kind of makes me go, eek! Too much pink. But I love this. These dark are going to work great. But you know, when is it too much? When is it enough? When do we stop? Well, I love scrappy quilts. I know these aren't scraps, but I love quilting as if they are scraps. I'm going to cut them. I'm going to make them into smaller pieces. I'm going to put it all together, and it's going to be a glorious quilt, and I'm so excited about that. But I wanted a few more of the darker colors in here. While I have this, they're almost a bit purpley, and I love it. It's going to work fine. But look up close. And while we have some of these, very dark colors, I really want to focus on some of these that are maybe in the middle and have some fun with that. So check this out. I'm going to turn that around so we can see how pretty it looks. I went to my local quilt store. And, you got to do that every once in a while and make sure they remember you and make sure you're in on whatever the new fabrics are. It's always fun to browse. And I thought, well, maybe I'll find something because I knew what I was looking for. I brought this with me, and I brought this with me, and I brought this with me, and this. So I brought the whole bundle. I didn't have these at the time. I left them home, but this is what I went into the shop with. And I said, okay, Sandra, help me find what I need to get here. And so I had a specific idea in mind, and I wasn't finding it. And that's when I went to her and said, I need your help. You know what you've got in your shop. Help find some fabrics that I can use. Now, if you look up close, each of these does have a pattern. This actually has a gold metallic leaf, and this one has like some overlaid X's, and this is a wavy pattern, and this is a square with some gold squares, for lack of a better word. But these are really going to add to it all and add to that scrappy feel, because I will have a lot of different fabrics representing the various colors. It's not always going to be that same fabric in the same place. Some will be peachy, some will be pink, some will, be on the fuchsia side, and some will be terracotta. So the colors are going to be gorgeous. And then the green is a beautiful background. And then I've got the whites, actually the cream colors. It'll sort of be a low volume settler. It'll settle things in the quilt. This will probably be, the accents, but the rest of this is going to be the bulk of the quilt, and I can't wait to show you what we're going to do with this. I took my bundle of 12 fat quarters, and I have them all nicely pressed. I have them lined up with the selvage to one side, and I'm going to cut the selvage off first. And that's probably something I've been doing more than I used to. I would usually start with the cut ends, but because we have so many fabrics with that zigzag cut, it's hard to line them up. So I use the selvage and I trim it, and that way I know I have a nice straight line to work with, and that works well for me. Now, going through 12 layers of fabric, I want to use my 60 millimeter, and that cuts through really well. And I'm going to start by, actually I want to measure this. I'm debating what size to cut my blocks. I was going to go with a 10-inch, but then that leaves that little bit over here. And I'm thinking what I want to do is use my fabric up almost completely. So I can get 21 inches, which means instead of cutting 10, there'll be 10 and a half. Does that really matter? No, but I'm not going to waste that inch over here and just have a narrow piece of fabric. So that's where I'm at, 10 and a half. Help me remember that because that's not a number I usually use. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1/2. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1/2. All right, so we'll go ahead and cut across here, pressing hard when you do a lot of fabric like this. And if you're interested in rotary blades, we have a sale going at the Fabric Hut right now. They have a sale with a pretty good discount on getting the nice titanium blades. So if that's something you're interested in, check out the description box below. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and a half. I'm double checking my numbers because this is not the normal that I cut, and it's very easy to make a mistake when you're doing something outside your normal box, right? So let me go ahead and trim this. Now, there's a reason why batiks are a favorite of mine, and I always like to have lots of them on hand in different colors, and I'm going to show you, these are going to work really well with this fabric. And what I'm particularly excited about is, as I was pressing these, I mean, these colors are all great. The terracotta has beautiful greens mixed in, and I think that's going to look wonderful. But it's this fabric that really got me. Look at that. We have the greens, but we also have those rosy colors in here, and you don't see that along the edge. So I was kind of surprised and pleasantly surprised to find the rosy color mixed in with the green. So that's going to be perfect. So I have my 10.5-inch squares here, and I'm going to set those aside. And this is a piece I'll save for later. Now, it's going to be, what do we have? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5 inches. So that'll definitely be something I can work with in the future. I can get a 5-inch and a 2.5-inch easily, or, 3 jelly roll strips, 3 of the 2.5-inch. So I like having flexibility. I'm not going to cut this right now until I know what I'm going to do with it. In the meantime, I'll set that aside. So I'm going to finish cutting my fabrics. I'm going to need a total of 64 squares. And as I said, in this case, we're going with 10.5-inch squares. So I'm going to get everything cut, and then I'll show you how we make our blocks. With all your blocks cut, now we're going to do the cross-cutting to create our design. And we want to do this in bundles of 4. So mix up your fabric so there's light, dark, medium, different fabrics in each bundle, and, plenty of your focal fabric in there. And then what we're going to do is make 2 cuts. And the first cut will be 4 inches from one side to the other. And without moving anything, the next cut will be 3 inches from one side to the other, or actually top to bottom in this case. And this is going to give us a nice large block, so our fabrics will really stand out, and then these will then be more of an accent. So then what I'll do is I'm going to take 1 block from here and put it on the bottom, because we want to mix this up so there's 1 of each fabric on each layer. And so we're going to take the top one and the second one here, and all but the last, so 1, 2, and 3. So this is what this finished block will look like, but we have a total of 4 that we're going to create just from using this one. And so I'm going to go through and do all that with my blocks until I have a total of 64 finished squares like this. And that's where we're going to be putting our quilt together. So let me go ahead and sew some of these up and show you what it's going to look like. Now you know how to cut your fabric and what different options you have. It's a matter of preference, what you like to use, whether you've done a lot of quilting and have your favorite size blocks, squares, fabric strips, whatever you use, or maybe you're a beginner and you want to get started with something simple. You've got your fabric, you're going to cut it, we're going to get started, but then what do? Do you just throw it all in a pile and start quilting? Of course not. we try and categorize it. We try and pull it together into different locations where we can find it. I'm getting to a bit of organization here, and believe me, that is not my forte. I have worked on this for years because I've carried bags and tubs of fabric around with me everywhere I go, and I've come up with a solution that works for me. Simple plastic dollar store finds. I can't tell you how easy this has made it for me. So let's go ahead and take a look at what to do after you cut your fabric. When I'm getting ready to quilt, I need to make sure that my fabric is ready to go when I am. This is just stacks of different 5-inch squares that I've cut from fat quarters, but I can always come here when I need my charm squares because I can pull out an assortment of fabrics. Here are a couple other ways that I store my fabric. Basically the same. I have charm squares. I have pieces. These are actually uncut fat quarters. Now, that's where I love these bins. These are dollar store finds. They're like $1.25. And so I bought a dozen of them, and I think I went back for another 6. And I just stack them on the shelf. And they're contained, which is great. And I love the fact that I can group them like this. But you've got to find a way to put your fabric in a place where you're going to use it. Uncut fabric remains uncut. It sits on the shelf. It collects dust. It makes you feel bad because you're not quilting with it. So you need to find the method that works. This is a very interactive way to store your fabric. And that's the key right here. If you're going to quilt, you need to have some fabric and you need to have it ready to go. But I'm telling you, it really does help if you figure out what it is you're doing and then just do it in stages. It's easier, it's more achievable, and you're not going to get stressed out or overwhelmed by having to do too much at one time. Okay, so that's my theory on cutting your fabric, storing your fabric so that you'll use your fabric. It's what it's all about. Congratulations, your fabric is cut. You have a way figured out of how to organize it, where to put it, so when you're ready to quilt, you know where it is. You can find it. You can mix and match all your pieces together, and you're going to make a beautiful quilt. But I do want to give you some ideas of how to put that together. I have a couple quilts that I'm going to show you, and this will give you a bit of a preview of the quilt we're going to be making in the next video with the fabrics I shared with you today. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and wait until you see these beauties. You're going to love it. I've been thinking about what I want to make with my new fabrics, what kind of quilt, and I know I want to do something that's easy for everybody to do. We're at the ready to quilt point, and I want to show you step by step how to go from choosing your fabrics, and now that we have these gorgeous fabrics, what are we going to do with it? And I thought about this quilt. This is one I made a couple years ago as a beginner quilt. And I haven't finished it. I didn't quilt it. I've just sort of had it tucked aside because I think I wanted to make it bigger. It's not really large unless I decide to stop here and make it a baby quilt. You know, there's so many decisions along the way when you're making a quilt. But here is the simple pattern right here. Whoop, sorry, I hit the camera. Here is the simple pattern, the block right here. We're going to take one large block, cut it into some smaller pieces, and resew it together. And it goes very simply. And I think this will be a great quilt to work on as a beginner because we don't have matching seams within the block or between the blocks, only in the corners. And we can work through that. That's not going to be a problem. And just look at how many colors you can make it. Super scrappy with lots of different colors and prints. You go from this almost monochromatic to a wild batik with dots and little dots and more dots and sprinkles over here and rainbow colors. But it all has one thing in common, that purpley color. That purple color is in every fabric, and that's what ties all this together. And it also makes these, super simple square blocks really stand out more because they look so much more intricate and planned and detailed by having all these fabrics. Now, I do want to show you an alternative to this. So if you have a bit more quilting experience as far as piecing your quilt and, putting things together, I'm going to encourage you to check the link up above because I also did this quilt with an improv block. And as you can see, this block right here is nice and straight, and it's cut straight on both sides. This one, on the other hand, here's my block here, and you see how this one is cut at an angle in both directions. Still the same 4 pieces, still the same mix of color, but it has a very different look to it by having those angles in there. And if improv is something more modern that you'd like to try, this would be a great way to do it. And like I said, I've got a tutorial on my website, and I have a free download for this pattern here. And I'll make sure and include that down below in the link so you can get a hold of this online. And like I said, it's a free pattern. Just click down in the description. So I think this is where we're headed. But first, we need to look at our fabric and see just what we need to do to get here. Once all my blocks are cut into 4 pieces, I'm going to put them together like this and chain piece them. And I'm going to do that for the entirety of my blocks. And then, actually, let me show you this one. When we cut it apart, we are going to flip things around. We don't want that seam to join. We want it to go this way so there's no matching seams. Makes it a bit of an asymmetrical pattern, which adds a lot of interest. So once we get there, we are going to put these together and start sewing. And again, these seams don't match. We're going to sew down the side and just chain stitch all the way through. Once we get there, where are they? Here we have some pretty blocks, and they are ready to go. And it's all about lining up this center right here. So this is not unlike the disappearing patch blocks. This is a very similar. I've not ever done a disappearing 4 patch, so that might be what this is. I'm not even sure. I just know it's really cool. Now, I don't want these two that close, so I'm going to put this here and here, and I have too many of this, so let me find another block here somewhere. Here we go. And that's going to go, we'll put this up here and put this down here. Okay. It's a little bit it is a puzzle, isn't it? But I don't have a lot of variety right now because I've just sewn a few blocks to show you how this will come together. There we go. And it looks wonderful. I really love how this pattern turns out, and putting this all together. Oh my goodness, it's going to be so pretty with all these colors splashed across the quilt. I can't wait. But that's the next video. And we're going to get this piece. I'm going to show you how to put it all together, first with the large 4 patches. Then we're going to join those to create our quilt, and then we'll get it quilted. So think about what some fun ways would be to quilt this. I'm getting some ideas myself. But remember, this is an easy quilt. This is a beginner quilt. We're not going to make it complicated whatsoever. So we'll come up with some fun, simple, easy, fast ideas. All right, until next time, I can't wait to get this finished. Thanks so much for being here with me today, and thank you for hanging in here till the end. I know sometimes these videos can get long, but I'm really excited to share this information with you and kind of start from the beginning and look at quilting from the basic steps, because sometimes if we miss a step along the way, we can find ourselves in trouble and not quite know where to go, what to do, how to handle our fabric. What if we miscut? What if we this? What if we that? if we know the basics, we'll know what the next step is, or at least have a good idea of where to start. I hope you've enjoyed this today, and I'm so glad you're here with me. It's always such a pleasure to share my quilting with you, but keep an eye open. There'll be more of my Ready for Quilting videos coming out, and I'm going to do a series just sharing different ideas and different ways, step by step, of how to do various processes, various quilt blocks, and it's a lot of fun, and once you know those basics, all your quilting is going to come together so much easier. So let's go ahead and keep moving on. Until next time, have a fantastic day.